Well, it's Budget Day and Labour Federation COSATU and its affiliates will be staging protests ahead of Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana's budget speech in Cape Town today. The unions are opposing austerity measures like spending cuts and tax increases, as well as government employees' medical aid hikes. Let's cross now to news anchor Leanne for further updates and also looking at some of those expectations ahead of today's budget speech. Leanne, good morning, and of course, Cape Town coming alive. Let's throw it over to you to find out a little more from your experts.
Yeah, Cape Town is certainly coming alive. It's a very, very busy morning. We found ourselves standing in the middle of the street at the moment, which is quite fun, to say the least. And when we talk about standing in the middle of the street, we're actually standing at Parliament, where, of course, construction is underway still. This, remember, is the scene of the severely damaged building with the National Assembly, where there was that fire and most of it destroyed in 2022. And you can see that there is still work taking place, and one day we hope we'll be back in there soon, and that'll of course be where we'll see these big events taking place. But right now, obviously, this is happening across the road at the Dome, but we just wanted to give you a glimpse into how far, in fact, it is in terms of that rebuilding in Parliament. But let's now focus again into what we can expect coming out of the budget today. And it's a great pleasure to welcome senior economist from Deloitte, Simon Schaefer, who's going to be giving us his views on all of this. Simon, thanks so much for being with us. It's great to have you here on the streets of Cape Town, where, of course, we're hoping to hear a lot from our finance minister. But, of course, you know, there's obviously there's a surplus, there's a narrowing deficit, there's stabilizing debt. Feels like we're in a turning point, but is it a turning point in reality?
Good morning, firstly. I hope we're going to have a boring budget, because if you think what happened last year, I think we don't need to repeat of that. You're pointing to a couple of indicators which are positive indeed, and I hope we can build on this momentum. I think it's too early to say we have turned the corner, because economic development and fixing things takes time, but the indicators point in the right direction.
I mean, when we look at debt to GDP, it remains at around 77%. Even if it stabilizes, is that still too high for a country that's growing at just 1.4%?
It is. The key challenge is we need to pay the debt, right? We need to service our debt, and all that money that we pay for servicing debt can't be spent somewhere else, be it for infrastructure developments, be it for education, be it for healthcare. So I think getting down the debt in the country is critical for us to grow the economy.
Yeah, I mean, because if you talk about debt servicing, we're basically saying, for those sitting at home, to give them a better perspective, debt servicing now consumes 22 cents of every rand collected. And that's a lot of money when we talk about debt. At what point does this actually become economically dangerous for us?
So I think we need to differentiate here as well, if we have rand debt or foreign currency debt.
Yeah.
Because if you have foreign currency debt, you're also exposed to exchange volatilities, and it's much more dangerous than having domestic debt. Not saying that domestic debt is good. You also need to differentiate what we have borrowed for. So if you're borrowing for productive gains in the economy, that's not such a bad thing. But if we are borrowing to pay salaries, that is potentially a dangerous thing. I think it's always important to differentiate those things.
Yeah. So debt, one issue, and we'll hopefully get a lot more clarity on that. But I think I'd like to just hover around that growth for a moment, because, you know, growth forecasts are still very, very modest at this point in time. Perhaps you want to tell us what it is that, you know, you're predicting, and also what reforms must accelerate to avoid stagnation.
Okay. As an economist, it's weird to say, but I actually have stopped watching the GDP growth numbers because they're just too low.
Wow.
For me, it doesn't make a difference. 1.2, 1.3, 1.4%. We need 5, 6, 7, 8% to actually make a dent in our challenges in the country. Unemployment. For me, it's becoming a bit, let me say, boring to watch those numbers, because what we need to unlock the small businesses in this country. We need to unlock the private sector. And I think we are on the right path with Eskom. Energy supply has been stabilized. Transnet is getting its act together. Logistics sector is benefiting from that. Now we need to address the water infrastructure, but government needs to create an enabling environment for the private sector to do its job.
Yeah, and that's actually, I mean, I'm just visualizing a graph in my head of this 1.4% growth and where we should be to actually see a meaningful difference. That gap is huge. So we are a very long way away from making a difference in South African lives. Now, you talk about small businesses and investment into them, but I feel like all of our money is going into stabilizing state-owned entities. I mean, you mentioned a few of them, Transnet being one of them, that is probably a nail in the side of so many businesses, because you look at the state of our roads, because there's no rail network. And, you know, we hear the president and everybody else speaking about high-speed trains between different cities and provinces when we don't even have a rail infrastructure to transport the goods. So state-owned enterprises, where are we there? And infrastructure spend as well.
So I think they play a critical role, right? Someone needs to provide electricity, but we're also seeing the opening of the electricity market now with the unbundling of ESCOM, which I think is a good step. However, on the transport side, it requires massive investments to get a rail network going, right? But talking about fast, what was it? What the president was calling it, the high speed trains, right?
High-speed train.
I would love to jump on a train from Joburg to Durban and be there in like 1 or 2 hours. That would be fantastic. 2 hours would be fantastic. But maybe let's start with the basics and get our iron ore by train to the ports, right? The coal from Mpumalanga to the ports on trains and not on trucks and damaging the roads, and then we continuously have to fix the roads. If you travel from through Mpumalanga to Mozambique, you see there's kilometers and kilometers of trucks with coal, and it's mind-blowing, right? This should be on a train, not on a truck.
Yeah, and that's real, and that's what I was saying. I mean, it's lovely to have a passenger train, but we need the goods transported, and that's what's hampering our industry. It's a very big problem. I want to also speak about Operation Vulindlela. It has made progress, that goes without say, but are reforms deep enough, particularly at a municipal level?
I think Operation Municipal has been a success. Obviously, we need to carry on this momentum, right? It's not a day job or like a job for one day to fix the economy. It needs to be an ongoing effort. On a municipal level, I think that's where especially your viewers will see it. If there's a pothole, if there is a water pipe burst, if there's no water in the pipe and in the pipes or in the taps, that's what the people see. So we need to address municipal government. How do we manage our municipalities, our small towns, and that we get the services to the people on the ground?
Yeah, because that's what people are calling for, and especially in a local government election year, these are things that people are going to be looking at. They are going to be voting when it comes to service delivery. And I mean, I'll just take the city of Johannesburg where I live, and the water problems. It's massive. It's devastating what it is actually doing. And that's just one city. I mean, there are many others that are going through this as well. I want to just quickly fast forward to other issues, because I know there's just so much to talk about. But one of the big ones as well is the illicit economy and revenue. Yeah, and your face says it all. It's estimated, and viewers, it's important you hear this. The illicit economy is estimated at up to 15% of our GDP. How big a fiscal leakage is this, and can it realistically be tackled? Because I think there are far too many people benefiting along the line here to actually taper it in. But what are your views?
So firstly, I think we need to follow the money to find out who's benefiting from it. Let me be slightly controversial, all right? So the illicit economy is very big in tobacco and alcohol, right? And there is a concept called the Laffer curve, which means if you increase taxes, your tax collection will only increase to a certain level. At a certain point, there's a turning point where any increase in taxes will actually result in lower tax revenue. So what I think we have reached is a point where taxing, and especially like sin taxes, tobacco and alcohol, we've created an environment where it becomes so lucrative to be in the illicit economy on those products, and they are addictive products, right? So I don't think that someone will wake up and say, oh, my cigarettes are too expensive, I'm going to stop smoking. No, people will look for ways to find cheaper cigarettes. And I think that's the key challenge, that we have created an environment where, and think back during COVID, where alcohol was banned. People found ways to find their booze, right? And these networks have grown out of that bootlegging economy that we created during COVID, and people are benefiting from it. There are crime syndicates attached to that, and it's a transnational issue that we are facing with.
Yeah.
But it's not only a South African issue. It's a global issue. If you look at some of those reports, the global illicit economy is massive. It goes into the trillions of dollars.
Yeah, it's frightening. And also gambling. That's another big issue. Come, talk to me about gambling.
Now, gambling, that's very interesting because I landed in Cape Town yesterday, and you go through the baggage claim area, and everywhere you have the betting companies advertising. Firstly, that's weird. Secondly, gambling can also be used as a conduit to launder money.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that the players in this economy are doing it, but there's a risk that gambling is abused for laundering money. Casinos, your sports betting, these are very interesting ways to launder your money. I'm not giving you any tips, but if you look into it globally, that's a huge challenge. So we have an illicit economy. We have the popping up of sports betting and betting operators left, right, and center. Yeah. You go into the poorer neighborhoods, into the townships, you see those adverts everywhere. I think that's an interesting way to maybe address it, to say, okay, we have banned cigarette advertising. There are certain limitations on alcohol advertising. Are we going to see some limitations around betting advertising?
I know. And it's huge. And the amount of money that's being spent on this online gambling and how people are getting poorer and poorer and poorer. It's a big discussion. I wonder if it'll be touched on at all, but that'll be something we see. I want to also move into global tensions right now. We saw US President Donald Trump delivering his State of the Union address and speaking about how amazing he's doing and how big everything is and how wonderful he is. But, you know, the reality is that he's touching on issues that I suppose people want to hear in their country's economy, that putting your citizens first. And that's very much so what Donald Trump is all about. But when we talk about bringing it back here, there are global tensions, and the trade is a big problem for South Africa. Talk to us about that, because that's where I imagine we're very, very vulnerable, and we don't need any external shocks right now in our economy.
So we are a small open economy, which means that we are dependent on trade.
Yeah.
We have we used to have quite a good manufacturing sector. If you think about the automotive industry, some of the factories that produce these vehicles in this country are some of the best in the world. It doesn't help us if we have these trade tensions that you're alluding to. What I would recommend is that we actually look at fixing our situation at home. The outside world we can't control. It's too big, we are too small to do that. And also, if we think about tariffs, we need to start thinking, how can we compete on quality, not on price? We have some of the best agricultural produce in the world, some of the best wine in the world. It shouldn't be a price war, it should be a quality war that we are fighting.
Yeah. While I've got you here, I mean, what are you looking out for here? Do you think we're in for any shocks? Because obviously, that, I think, from what I've gathered from speaking to everybody, is off the table for now. I'm not sure he can go there again. Maybe you've got a different view. But tax increases, just in general, what will you be looking out for out of this budget?
So as I said early on, I'm hoping for a boring one, right?
Yeah, please.
No surprises. It's an election year, so they need to be careful what they're doing, not to alienate voters. I'm just looking on how we're going to carry over this momentum that we have built through Operation Mulindlela in the last few quarters, and I hope that we will see and hear something about how do we carry this over, this momentum.
All right, Simon, thank you for talking to us. Thank you so much, and for enduring the loud traffic. We make you stand in strange places, but thank you for your time. Thank you so much. And of course, that was our guest here, who, of course, was speaking to us here about what to expect on this special day, which of course is Budget Day. Simon Schaffer, he is from Deloitte. He's a senior economist there, and of course, at 2 o'clock this afternoon, we'll hear from the Finance Minister exactly what he's going to be assigning different places, all the money, where they're going to be putting it, who's going to get more money. I've been fascinated watching all of these young school kids making their way here to school, and that's the one place, and I know that we're going to focus in on that a bit later on, where education will come under the spotlight. Of course, healthcare is also one of the big issues as well, but that gambling gambling, that online and illicit industry where money is perhaps being laundered outside of the country, that's a big thing to watch out for, and that is a lot of money we're talking about.